So in this video, I will be reviewing Update 2.5 in Marvel's Avengers, which obviously is the addition of Jane Foster's The Mighty Thor as a character, which is technically, I guess, our first Echo character if you're not including Kate and Hawkeye, but I'll also talk about that a little bit. But again, this will be my review for 2.5, so if you enjoy this video today, feel free to like and subscribe for future Marvel content. So I'll start off by saying, usually when I go to review an update, I usually judge it first and foremost on whether or not there was content that was added, right? Because the past couple updates, there has not been content that was added. There have been quality of life fixes, which I've enjoyed a lot, but there has not been actual hard and tangible content. However, I do think I consider a hero to be added content, even though there was not an operation or a stage or anything. With that being said, however, because Jane is basically an Echo character and not her fully fledged own kind of hero, her own thing going on, I am going to do the same thing I do when there is no content added, and I'm not going to let myself give it a rating above an 8. So I automatically deduct 2 points when there is no hard content. Again, though, I do feel a hero is content, but because she is basically an Echo, I will not be giving this a rating above an 8. But now let's talk about what the actual update looks like, right? So I think a lot of what Jane is and what she can do is going to be real murky for a lot of people, right? Because I know a lot of people aren't going to like it because she is very similar to Thor, and a lot of people aren't going to like that it took them 7 months or so, if you want to say, to put out another hero that's basically very similar to one that we already had. In my opinion, I personally enjoy how different she is from Thor. She is very, very, very similar to Thor still. There's no question about that. But I do enjoy the differences, I should say, that she has that's not the same as Thor. Now, when we're talking about the Kate Bishop Hawkeye situation, Kate Bishop and Hawkeye are not Echo characters of each other. They have very similar kind of animations, but they have different heroics. They have the way you can build their kits are very different. Like, everything about them is basically different besides the fact that they both use a sword and a bow and arrow. That's basically all the similarities that they have. But Thor and the Mighty Thor, aka Jane Foster, they do share 2 heroics, and they do share basically all of their combos besides a couple from Jane Foster. So Jane Foster's differences are obviously the light attack, where she throws Mjolnir instead of just swinging Mjolnir, which I actually enjoy a lot because it kind of has more of a Brooklyn Brawler feel to it. And then she also has different ranged power attacks where she's able to throw Mjolnir like a double combo throw if you time it just right as soon as Mjolnirs are called to your hand after the first throw. And honestly, I prefer Thor's ranged power attack over this. There's nothing wrong. This is not a bad ranged power attack at all. I'll just say that. But I personally just prefer Thor's because my main Thor build revolves around his ranged power attack currently and the lightning that stems off of it. And you can't do the same thing with Jane Foster. That you can call lightning by pressing R2 wherever Mjolnir lands, but it's not the same. It doesn't like make lightning ripple on the ground like you can for Thor's. So I personally prefer Thor's in that respect. Jane Foster obviously has a different ultimate, which I am 1,000% sure that I prefer the all weapon as opposed to the Bifrost. Here's the thing, though. I think the all weapon is definitely way more fun than the Bifrost. There's no question. But the Bifrost in utility is better if you're trying to deal a crap ton of damage in a singular point. The Bifrost is still better in that regard, at least from what I've seen. But I personally still prefer the all weapon just because it's kind of a mixture almost of the Bifrost and Hawkeye's hunting arrow, because Mjolnir flies around like Hawkeye's hunting arrow, but then you can also get a gear perk for the all weapon that leaves like a cryo area on the ground, which is very similar to what the Bifrost can do inherently with the cryo configuration with Thor. And then Jane Foster also has a different intrinsic, which is the All-Mother's Blessing, and then her overcharge is the God Tempest, as opposed to Thor's Odin Force, which his intrinsic is just Odin Force, and then when you overcharge it, it automatically activates Odin Force. And if I'm being honest, I don't know if I have an opinion on which one is better for me. I think that Jane's intrinsic is different enough to be interesting. It looks like God's Tempest is made to be more of like a kind of like she's able to push back enemies more with shockwaves and stuff like that, whereas Odin Force can zap enemies all around you with lightning and stuff like that. They're very similar, but they are slightly different enough. And now let's talk about how you can build Jane, right? So in my opinion, and then again, this is my personal opinion, there are going to be people who disagree, but I do think that Jane should be built differently than Thor. My primary Thor build that I would like to do is a high heroic with higher ranged. But with Jane Foster, I feel like it might be better for a higher heroic and a higher melee. Now, that's not to say that you can't pull off a high range build with her at all. They would probably work, but I just feel like for me and how my playstyle is especially, I feel like it might be more viable for me to do a higher melee build, which is the build that I put out for her, which is kind of just a signature attack / power attack battery effect build using vibranium and pin payloads. So that's kind of the build. I don't know if that's going to be the build that I stick with and just like power it up using different pieces, but we will see. But that's kind of where I'm going with that right now. I do think that because you can build her so differently, like just the inclusion of a different ultimate heroic, I feel like makes it so you can build her a lot differently than Thor, because a lot of people will go for just a super high heroic with Thor because it can output a lot of Bifrost damage, but you can't necessarily do that with Jane, so I do think it's different. Overall, there's not really too much to say about this update besides whether or not I like Jane Foster. That's what it really comes down to, is whether or not I like Jane, because that was the primary focus of this update. Besides like bug fixes and stuff, I don't even know what else they honestly put in this update, if I'm being honest. So with that being said, I will say I do like Jane Foster. If we are going to get Echo characters in the future, I pray, or I should say continue to get Echo characters in the future, I pray that it is in the same style as Jane Foster, where they make them, and I'm just going to use this as an example, but like War Machine. If we ever get a War Machine, for example, and they want to make War Machine an Echo character to Iron Man, I pray that like they give us 1 or 2 different heroics and we're able to build their gear much different than you would build the other person's gear. Obviously, you can build Jane Foster the same way you build Thor if you want to, but in my opinion, it's more viable to build her in different ways than you would for Thor. So in my opinion, I am personally happy with Jane Foster's The Mighty Thor. I think she feels refreshing enough with the way her different animations are, with the light attacks, the range power attacks, and the different ultimate. And the way you build her gear, I feel like is different and refreshing enough to feel not like we're doing the same thing over and over again. You could disagree with me, and that's fine, but the way I feel is that it feels refreshing to me. So I will give this update an 8 out of 10 with only the -2 points from the fact that Jane is still technically an Echo character and not her own thing. But comment down below if you enjoyed Jane Foster's release, or if you did not enjoy Jane Foster's release and potentially why you don't enjoy it. But if you enjoyed this video today, feel free to like and subscribe for future Marvel content, and I appreciate you for watching the video.